Hi, this is Tanvi. I curate the Bombay Diaries and share my ethos on nutrition on my platform, the Millennial Kitchen. Today I have with me a very interesting human who's a neuroscientist. He is known as India's brain enhancer. He contributes to many task forces and forums, including the B20 and G20 task forces on neurodegenerative policies. He's an alum of Oxford and heads the Alumni Association for Oxford Business Alum. He's been invited by our presidents to speak and recently gave a keynote speech at Startup Mahakumbh. He's also been invited by prestigious universities, covered by every international media platform, and spoken at the London School of Economics. We have with us Mr. Kumaar Bagrodia. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Today, as we move into an era where people are incredibly confident discussing mental health and optimizing the power of the human brain, I am honored to have a neuroscientist with us who does exactly this. In the past, people shied away to speak about mental health. They brushed things under the carpet. But today's frontier of wellness recognizes the power of mental health and the human brain. And I use the word human brain because my first question to our amazing guest is, what is the difference between brain and mind?
First of all, thank you for inviting me for this interview. Great question. Often we confuse the brain and the mind and we use these terms interchangeably.
Yes.
And that's incorrect. The mind is simply a manifestation, right? You cannot measure it, weigh it. It's not tangible. And neither can you crack open the skull, look at the brain and say, well, this is where the mind is. So like I said, the mind is a manifestation. The brain is a physical organ. Usually the brain is the most closely associated organ with the mind. Of course, now you also need to look at the gut-brain connection, the heart and brain connection, so on and so forth. But the key difference between the brain and the mind is the physicality of the brain versus the intangibility of the mind.
That's amazing, Kumar, because I actually didn't give it thought with that angle. What, in your mind, is ancient Vedic wisdom in terms of what it brings to brain health?
A lot of our rituals, the way of life that our forefathers lived and professed was actually deeply rooted in neuroscience. We were always told to sleep at a certain hour, wake up at a certain hour, look at the sun or do certain activities, eat in a certain way, sit in a certain way. All of these had ramifications on how your gut-brain connection, how the rest of your central nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, all of these would function properly. Moving away from that lifestyle has been detrimental to our health, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, cognitively as well. The Vedic wisdom of consuming enough fats. I don't remember seeing data that in India, people in their 90s and 80s had higher incidence of Alzheimer's. No. Now you find people in their 60s in India and 70s getting diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Why? Because we depleted fats from our diet in the last 30 years. Why was this bad? Because the brain needs fat. 60% of your brain is actually made up of fat. 25% of your body's cholesterol is stored in your brain. So this is just one of the smaller examples of how, Vedic wisdom of consuming good quality fat was taken away from us by so-called Western modern science. And now even they are opening up to that idea that it was a bad idea. I could go on and on about how some of the sort of so-called ancient way of life actually was a good way of life.
I couldn't agree more with you. I truly believe in our ancient wisdom, having studied Hindu scriptures. But tragically, we live in a time where there's climate change, there's pollution in air, water, even light.
Sure.
And for that reason, I like your scientific approach, mirroring today's times on how to live with joy and achieve longevity. My question for you is specifically now about light. Why and how do you think light impacts the human body, the human brain, and longevity?
Light has been used as a form of medicine since ancient times, not just in India, but across the world. It used to be called heliotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
And from there on, we've had versions of it being called phototherapy in India. Naturopathy and Ayurveda would use, different forms of color to impact the brain and different organs. Today, modern light therapy is called photobiomodulation. So in the last 70 years or so, it's been the subject of tremendous research across the world. Organizations like NASA have harnessed it to their advantage for astronauts in space as well. Why light? Every living being on the planet, whether mammal, reptile, insect, every living organism on the planet, even plants, have mitochondria. These are organelles, which are small parts of every cell. And what do? They actually harness the oxygen that you breathe in. They harness the glucose that you consume, or rather generate from food. And they harness light to generate energy. There is no life form possible on planet Earth without mitochondria. One of the things that mitochondria do is they generate ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is like the energy currency of your body. Right? That's what ensures that you're doing all the tasks, that you're thinking, moving, digesting, breathing. Everything requires energy, and that energy is generated by the mitochondria. They are like the powerhouses of your cells. Think about the three aspects of generating energy. So, food, oxygen, light. Food requires your body to work hard, right? Oxygen also requires your body to work hard. You're constantly breathing, etc. Light is the most efficient form of energy generation because you're not consuming any calories. There's no intake. There is no hard work being done by the body per se, except at a cellular level where the mitochondria absorb the light and convert it into various forms of energy, ATP, nitric oxide, etc. So it's not just energy which is required, but there are other neurotransmitters, chemicals, all kinds of bodily processes which the mitochondria enable. So if I was to ask you a question that if you want more energy in the day and you've already eaten enough calories for
Correct.
the rest of the day, there's only so much of pranayam and kriya and running that you can do to improve your oxygenation level. What is the best way, the most efficient way to then get more energy? Is light. So there is enough anecdotal evidence, I'm sure you would know. People, if they're not seeing enough sunlight in the winters,
Yes.
you get seasonal affective disorder, depression, anxiety, so on and so forth. That is the most straightforward example of how depletion of light is leading to severe issues. Similarly, if you're able to harness specific wavelengths of light at specific times of the day, you can actually power up your mitochondria way better.
That is amazing because as a chef and a nutritionist, I've been asked a question about people that can eat as much as they like and not put on weight. And one of my answers is that one is, of course, the genes, but the process of digestion is using so many calories.
Sure.
So it's interesting to see and understand also that light creates and fuels the powerhouses of the cells of our body, which is the mitochondria. And I can actually relate then to the culture of our saints and learned people just meditating
Sure.
on light, clean air, and maybe water as well. So, again, there is Vedic wisdom here that I see. How have you harnessed this Vedic wisdom with scientific study, clinical evidence, to use technology to create tools to help people at an individual level with your knowledge and work?
So let me speak about light first.
Sure.
Like I said, about 70 years ago, several organizations across the world started experimenting using light therapy. So not all kinds of wavelengths of light are beneficial and required at all times throughout the day. Without getting into too much of technicality, some of the wavelengths of light that we use are the red and the near infrared.
Okay.
So near infrared is a wavelength which is invisible to the naked eye. And both of these two wavelengths have been proven now to offer superlative impact in the mitochondria. You can make technology in a way where they don't generate thermal energy.
Okay.
So, you don't need to have a light touching your skin or on your head, which is heating you up, because that has different advantages or disadvantages. The technology we use, like I said, is called photobiomodulation, which simply put is how do you use light to modulate your biology? In this case, using red and near infrared light. The maximum amount of mitochondria in our body is stored in our brain. So just to put it in perspective, when we are using a red light therapy panel, and you're standing in front of the panel, practically naked because you want to get red light on your body, each skin cell has just a few hundred mitochondria, right? Just a few hundred. The liver cell, maybe a couple of thousand, because the liver is working hard. Each cell in the heart has probably 5,000 mitochondria. Each cell in the brain has 2 million mitochondria.
Goodness.
So just do the math.
Absolutely.
You want to irradiate your brain as much as possible. Of course, getting it on your body is not disadvantageous in any way. But if you are running short of time,
yes,
and we all live busy lives where we can't be, taking off our clothes for hours and hours throughout the day and getting the right light at the right moment.
Correct.
Then the best possible thing to do is to irradiate your brain. That's one. The second part you want to do is irradiate your nostrils, because that is also a very, very dense, capillary dense area. And out of your 12 arteries, almost half of them pass through your nostrils. So if you're able to irradiate your nostrils every day with the right kind of light, you're actually irradiating your body in a very efficient manner. So that's how we are using technology with tools, a simple cap, which you can, like a baseball cap, which you wear on your head, a nasal device you put inside your nostrils for 15 to 30 minutes every day. And then we've also come up with a belt, which you can wear on any part of your body. Because one of the advantages of red and near infrared light therapy is it's also anti-inflammatory.
I see.
Think about it. If your body is generating more energy without extra hard work, where is that energy going? Your brain and nervous system are going to direct it to those areas which are needing either age reversal or anti-inflammation or repair. And if you have inflammation, the body will, sort of try and take care of it first. But if you're able to irradiate that area directly, it's a little bit more efficient. So those are the three sort of red light therapy tech-based products that we currently have. The technology itself has been researched for about 70 years. Over 100 million patients globally have used it. Not our devices, but other devices. Yeah. And there's been about 7,000 plus research papers and clinical trials across the world on the efficacy, efficiency, and safety. There are no known visible side effects of using the technology. It's just light.
Absolutely.
Like with any other therapy, you just need to be mindful that you don't overdo things.
Of course.
Right? I mean, even breath work, you can't just keep deep breathing throughout the day or for hours at a go, right? So similarly with light, there are certain protocols on how much should you consume, what should be the intensity, what should be the frequency, etc. So keeping all of that in mind is how we've made our devices.
Clearly, it cannot go unsupervised. Extremely important, but must be with guidance, scientific guidance like yours. Interestingly, I was studying breath, and I'm logging my own journey with breath because there's so much work and programs for breath work. And I think breath is also very bio-individual.
Sure.
And interestingly, again, you said that it can't be overused. So what I studied and learned was that we are over-breathing.
Sure.
And we are overeating. And so with something as easy as what you're offering people, I'm afraid it shouldn't be overused. So please be cognizant that if you come across any of these devices, it's done under their guidance. That's just something I wanted to share.
Sure.
My next question to you is that you are on the B20 G20 task force. That's a huge responsibility and, of course, an achievement, but I see you as a person that exudes an aura of service. What do you bring to the table in terms of helping the world with neurodegenerative diseases?
I'd like to answer that in two parts.
Please.
Firstly, we've been doing a lot of work using technology, using brain-computer interface to help people understand their brainwave patterns. So when I say brain-computer interface, we use the non-invasive kind, wherein there is no chip or there is no sensor going inside your skull. These simply are placed on the top of your head. They don't scratch the surface in any manner. And most importantly, they don't pass any radiation or electric current or magnetic waves inside your body. They are simply reading your brainwave activity.
Okay.
The easiest way for people to understand how their brain is functioning, where they are in life, what changes they want to make is to first measure.
Absolutely.
Right? It's very difficult to improve or enhance things or even maintain something if you're not able to measure it, right? Most of us don't realize, but even in the last 30, 40, 50 years in India, healthcare is dominated by technology. Can you run a household today with kids, let's say, if you don't have access to a simple thermometer, right? What do? Your child has fever. Do you call the doctor and say he has fever? Well, the doctor's question is going to be, well, how high is it?
Correct.
Right? Can you go out and say, oh, I've stubbed my toe, on a table. It's really swollen. Do I have a fracture? Yes, some clinical diagnosis is required, but you need an X-ray. If the X-ray is inconclusive, you need to probably go out and do an MRI, right, to see if there's any other damage. So all throughout the last 30 to 50 years, we've progressively seen how health tech or modern science has been used for diagnoses. Let's move to more recent times. Who would have thought that for a few $100s and now even cheaper, you'll have a device on your wrist which can measure your heart rate, pulse, resting heart rate, whatever you want in terms of your cardiovascular system. Yes, some of them proven to be effective, some more algorithmic, which are still under development. Nobody would have guessed that, right? Today you can do a mobile ECG. Just by placing your fingers onto sensors, you can get a very, very detailed ECG on the go. Similarly, you need to understand how is your brain functioning. And when I say function, I'm not really talking about doing a brain MRI to understand the physiology, unless somebody's, God forbid, has a tumor or a lesion. But if it's just function, you need to understand how the brainwave patterns functioning, what is the coherence, what is the power. Sorry, won't get into much jargon. But on a resting state, at the core, what are your brainwave patterns? How is your brain trained to think, react, behave, your attitudes, your cognitive skills? We need to get a snapshot of that. And that's the first sort of product or service which we have at NeuroLeap, which is a brain function assessment. The second part then is how can you enhance this? So if you're able to do the right things to measure and then enhance on an ongoing basis, you are closest to not being subjected to severe neurodegeneration. Because neurodegeneration has several angles to it. One, of course, is your overall lifestyle, diet, sleep, exercise, all of those. But also, what is the cognitive load that your brain is taking? So if you find patterns which make it difficult for you to do certain cognitive tasks, but because of the rigors of day-to-day life, we have to engage in those tasks, then your brain is consuming way more energy there's a lot more stress, a lot more oxidative stress in your brain and nervous system to complete those basic tasks, which means you're more and more susceptible to degeneration. So if you can smoothen the ride for your brain.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that means if you know you have to pay attention in your job for hours in a day, but you have symptoms where you have deficit or restlessness or hyperactivity, then you need to be able to measure it and make sure you solve that issue so that you can still go about doing all the high cognitive, high attention seeking activity without taxing the brain. Same goes for memory, same goes for addiction, same goes for your mood disorders, anxiety. How can you allow the brain to respond in a less anxious manner to the same trigger, to the same situation? Some of it happens with experience, some you require an intervention.
Correct.
So to your point, we don't live in the pristine environment that our Vedic forefathers did. So air is polluted, water is polluted, food's polluted, and more importantly, we have social media, we've got digital tools all around us all the time, which make it impossible for the average person to say, I'm going to be taking care of myself without doing anything.
Correct.
Right? So modern problems require modern solutions, and hence we are using science for it.
It's fantastic that you can quantify it, because clearly modern science is a wonderful way to do that, to solve problems. I believe in that as well. What is your take on sugar on the brain's neural pathways? And I ask you this question simply because I had to prepare for a dialogue on food addictions, and obviously read ample of papers, went through some books, and realized that every single addiction stems from a common neural pathway in the brain. So please enlighten us on what your views about this are.
You're right. Addiction does stem from neural networks, neural pathways. And it's not just sugar. I mean, you can be addicted to anything, any person, any way of thinking. That is a form of addiction. When we move away from passion, when we move away from simply liking something or some person or a thought or a belief too much, to the other side, where it becomes an obsession or you're compulsive about it. So, like I said, it could be a person, it could be a thought, it could be a way of life, it could be substance. Substances are easier to get addicted to because of the neurochemical nature. People, you can actually sense, let's say somebody has been very, very attached to someone and they lose that person, God forbid, you can see the trauma in the brain, right? Why do we say that a certain person is obsessive and compulsive about a certain routine or obsessive about a certain way of life, right? Fanatical.
Correct.
These are all pathways in the brain which have not too much to do just with intaking substance, but how you get rewarded or not punished for engaging in that activity. So you keep doing that activity if it's a bad activity or detrimental to people around you or society at large, and you're not punished. And you start getting some pleasure out of it, a thrill. You will soon start seeing that you've become addicted to doing that.
Correct.
It is simply a case of incentives versus disincentives. A simple example would be, let's take drunk driving. In our city of Mumbai, till maybe 10 or 15 years ago, drunk driving was rampant. What changed it? When the government started enforcing really strict penalties, the number of drunk driving cases started to reduce. Was it that the alcohol changed? Was it the quality of the alcohol that changed that people were drinking? So it's not just about the biochemical nature of the substance being consumed that is impacting addiction. It is the ability of the brain to comprehend a serious disincentive or a serious incentive. So the incentives still remain to go out and have a good time, but you've got a serious disincentive now. And most people have come into saying, okay, I'm going to have my driver drive me, or I'll have a designated driver, a friend, family member who's going to drive me if I've taken one drink too many. that behavior change is the most easiest and stark example of how it is not just the biochemical reaction in the brain, but the environment which actually plays a huge role in altering or cementing further that set of neural pathways.
That is so interesting. And I really appreciate the expanse of the knowledge you've given us with that point of view, with evidence on addictions. I'll go back to my question though. As a chef and a nutritionist, I'm curious about the role of sugar, sugar spikes, and the consumption of sugar on the human brain, because recent studies have shown that dementia, for instance, is being labeled as type 3 diabetes. So that is what my question is in terms of sugar consumption.
Sure. I think sugar to a certain point is not bad. Going back to my earlier point, if you microdose or overdose on even the most healthiest substance in your kitchen, you will have problems, right? So even if I was to say that I'll have the smallest quantity of sugar allowed, but I will break it up into small micro doses throughout the day, or depending on a task that I complete, I will get a really, really tiny quantity. That can be detrimental for you in terms of an addiction. In terms of Alzheimer's or neurodegenerative diseases, there's a lot of new theories, well, not entirely new, but let's say not completely proven. So Alzheimer's could in fact be an autoimmune issue.
I see.
So there's enough, how should I say, smoke around on what really is causing neurodegeneration. No one knows the absolute 100% response, how much of it is to do with sugar, how much of it is to do with plaque, proteins, why is it getting stored in a certain way. There is a lot of research from different angles going about it. But you're right, sugar is something that we tend to overconsume, a lot of it unknowingly as well. So a lot of the packaged foods, which may not be sweet to the taste, also are laced with sugar. That perhaps increases your overall glucose consumption. I don't think sugar alone should be labeled as such a big enemy or a villain. I think we tend to villainize it and yet, engage in so many other things which are harming us. So as long as you can have a sugar intake which is just on the margin, I think you should be fine.
And I really appreciate that thought, because I see what Kumar is trying to tell us is to keep it in moderation and to keep it natural. The processed sugars, the hidden sugars that are so discreetly abundant in today's food culture, especially UPF, ultra processed food,
Sure.
is what I see Kumar is actually talking about. And then that would be the right villain, and not natural sugar sources like what we have with fruits and vegetables and whole grain.
Absolutely. I don't think we should be cutting down on fruits unless, of course, you've got a diabetic issue. But apart from that, just consume what you think would be a good, wholesome, balanced diet.
Absolutely. So we live in a digital age. In fact, I saw a wonderful panel and a talk by you. And you said we moved from the physical to the digital age. I see millennials, Gen Alpha, talking about mental health like there is no tomorrow. I feel like it's over-addressed and not taken normally as we did in our days. Of course, there's a difference between brushing things under the carpet and addressing them. What is your take on this matter, and what is your message to the millennials and Gen Alpha about this?
Well, first of all, I completely understand the pressures that this generation is going through, where they've subjected themselves and their entire life to the scrutiny of people they know, that's their friends and family, and the ones they don't know, all on social media. The human brain has never been subjected to this much scrutiny, right? Knowing that you need to broadcast every move of yours, try and chronicle on your phone camera every enjoyable moment, whether it's a concert, whether it's your holiday, whether it's a workout or it's a meal, and then waiting for validation on each of those moments is extremely detrimental to the human brain, and we are seeing the impact of that. without brushing aside or, not recognizing these issues in this generation and even other generations, I would say that mental health has a lot to do with your own decisions and choices which you make in the day. I see all over social media, there are people who are suffering indeed very direly from chronic depression, anxiety, and other severe disorders. And they will come out and say, we are experts because we have lived experience. And it's absolutely fine to do that, to share your experience and what has worked or not worked for you. But you also need to understand that not all of these are issues which were created just by the environment. Yes, our environment has a huge role to play, but so does our own body, and so do our habits and the efforts we take to maintain good mental health. For example, if I was to tell you, Tanvi, that I'm not going to give you water to drink for the next 2 days, and this is not a fast that you're doing, you just have to dehydrate yourself. And then after 2 days, you're going to be in the sun in the afternoon, and you have to jog or run, work hard. And then you have to respond to a series of questions by your psychologist or psychiatrist on your mental health. What do you think your responses will be? Will they be positive? Will they be saying, oh, I feel high on energy. Yes, I want to do all tasks. Yes, the world is pink and rosy and bright. Or will it be the other way around, where you're feeling low, weak? How do you distinguish between feeling low and weak versus sad? How do you distinguish between, I want to do things in life vis-a-vis not having the energy to do things? So this is just perhaps a stupid example, but just to tell you that how just hydration alone impacts your mental health. What we consider mental health is your body's response, your nervous system's response in that moment. Now, if you move up the ladder, nutrition, vitamins, deficiencies, if you have low iron, you will not have the energy to do all the tasks that life demands of you. Or if you do them, you will be expending way more mental energy and effort to do that. If you're going to go to bed late every day. So I'm sure you're aware of the circadian rhythm.
Yes, absolutely.
There is a reason why we shouldn't stay up late, because your brain and nervous system has to work harder after a certain amount of time. There is no natural light. The food that you've eaten at dinner has been consumed. And then you will go out and, consume easy sugars, easy glucose to sustain energy. That has its own challenges. So you're messing around with your brain metabolism, with your overall metabolism, how your brain is metabolizing energy. The next day you don't feel good. These are scientifically proven facts. This is not just our forefathers telling us. This is modern science saying if you sleep late, your likelihood of feeling sad, low, anxious, cognitively weaker the next day is way higher. My message to people who are suffering from any mental health issue is to first solve your biology.
Absolutely.
Solve your habits. Sleep early, wake up early, get sunlight, get oxygen, work hard. And when I say work hard, I mean both ways, cognitively, emotionally, as well as physically. Because the human brain is trained to take challenges. And if we don't challenge it on a daily basis, weekly basis, we are setting it for disaster. Because then you're used to a life which is absolutely smooth, friction-free, without any challenges. So your brain is losing its ability, the tenacity to respond to a stressful situation, whatever that situation may be. The second part, of course, take care of your environment, right? But that is easier said than done.
Yes, absolutely.
You are in, an institution, it's a competitive environment, you have to make do with it. You are in an organization, you're with colleagues, some may be supporting you, some are competing with you. You have to make do with that. This complete discourse, which is going towards saying, let's make every environment pristine, without friction, without negativity, A, is not possible, and B, I would say is not desirable. Because for the rest of your life, what are you going to be doing? Living in this cocoon, in this bubble? So just as, during COVID, when there was pathogens in the air, we had to cover ourselves, our nose, mouth,
Yes.
wear gloves. sanitize everything, you can't do that for the rest of your life, because then you will deplete your immunity. Similarly, a life which is built on environment everywhere, which is with zero challenges, zero friction, zero effort, is going to deplete your brain's ability, those networks in your brain which are tuned in to fight back, to be resilient, to take that on your chin and move on, would have depleted completely. The third part, so we spoke about taking care of your biology and your environment. And the third part, I would say, is your connections. And connections not just with people. Again, it is a myth that has been propagated that only if you are an extrovert and outgoing and meeting people every day at parties with large groups of people, only then can you be happy. This is the Instagram version of happiness, of social connections. The truer version is what works for you. If you just need one close friend or one close family member, so be it. That's fine, as long as you have somebody to share your life with in a meaningful manner. The other part of connection is with the universe. Whether you use religion to do that, whether you use spirituality, but to connect with a larger purpose. This has twofold advantages. One, people around you not all the time will have all the answers. You should be able to then connect with a higher power, to seek answers, to seek forgiveness, to seek guidance. Again, I'm not propagating spirituality or religion or both or either, but there is no denying that there are energies which are amongst us, which we need to be able to harness and connect to a larger purpose.
Absolutely.
The second part about connecting to a larger purpose is it gives you a goal in life, in your day-to-day life, to work towards something. Otherwise, once you have, let's say, achieved whatever short-term goals you have, you've studied for your exams, they are done, your career is on a good path, you're a family person, all that's going well, something will start gnawing at you because you have not aligned yourself to a larger goal, a larger purpose in life, whatever that may be. Maybe your larger purpose is to take care of your family in a certain manner for many, many decades. Maybe it is, your career. Maybe it is, your business. Whatever it may be. It could be art, it could be literature, it could be writing, reading. Something which is larger than what you tangibly only look at on a day-to-day basis, so that on a downtime, on a bad day, in a bad moment, or a bad week, month, whatever it may be, you can still align yourself to that larger purpose and say, well, this is why I need to be around. This is why I need to get out of bed. This is why I need to get to bed early. This is why I need to lead a life in a certain manner, because this is my larger purpose. So unless you have these three things, irrespective of whatever generation you belong to, irrespective of how much of neurotransmitters you try and enhance, you can keep saying, oh, I need dopamine, oh, I need serotonin, oh, I need oxytocin. It's not going to work.
Correct. So I see that humans today have this view of finding themselves in solidarity, to be happy, to stay solo and find that joy, and then get into relationships and connections. Speaking to therapists and psychiatrists all the time. And I'm not undermining that. But in one sense, I think it's a drain to relive negative moments. So I truly appreciate what you do. What I'd like to know is, what kind of inputs do you take from people that come to you for, say, anxiety or depression or a lack of ability to cope in general?
Good question. So we are a neurotech-based service, which means we only use technology to, one, assess what's happening in your brain patterns, and to help you change them. We don't prescribe any medications whatsoever, so no psychiatric medications. There is very little evidence that there is any chemical imbalance in the brain which is causing depression or anxiety. That entire theory has been debunked. There is very little evidence now that going for years and years and discussing, like you said, the same problem or trying to correct it only via conscious interventions can completely heal a person. In fact, there's new research now that mental health is the only industry perhaps where the more therapists, the more psychiatrists, the more meds being prescribed, the number of people who are mentally ill or facing mental health issues is just going up, which is counterintuitive.
Correct.
So are we throwing water on the fire or maybe more fuel? There is also evidence that this entire notion of all the time talking about or thinking about your mental health has actually made it worse. And there is evidence to that now. I don't absolutely say that you should not be talking about mental health. Of course you should be. But you should also be talking about your physical health. You should also then be looking at your own habits, looking at your own acts and choices throughout the day. So from the time you wake up in the morning, or even before you wake up, you are presented with a choice. That you've got an alarm. Will you wake up on the alarm and get to work or get to your exercise or not? That's the first choice. You exercised. You have a second choice in that moment. Do I push myself or not? You come back. You've got a third choice. What should I have for breakfast? Something healthy or not? So on and so forth throughout the day. All of these choices are building certain patterns in your brain. A pattern to run away from things which are hard to do. A pattern to run away from things which are not pleasurable in the short term. So nobody wakes up in the morning and out of choice says, I'm going to have bitter juice because it's good for my gut. Right? You're doing it because of self-regulation. Self-regulation is the brain's ability to do things which are important in the short term, but they may not be enjoyable, but are good for your long term. So as long as your brain can keep doing things which are good for the future, although it might not be good in the short term, might not be enjoyable, might not be gratifying, you will find your brainwave patterns to be moving in a positive direction for you. When I say positive, I don't mean the toxic positivity that everything's going to be fine. I just mean positive versus negative. Why is this important? Because this is exactly what we want to understand when you come to us. These are things which we don't ask you. So when you come to our center, honestly, I've not met most of my clients ever. They've done therapy without me meeting them. My technical team will simply ask you 3 questions. So your date of birth, your gender, and I must clarify your gender at birth.
Okay.
And the third thing is whether you're left or right hand dominant. That's all we take from you. That's our intake form.
Wow.
All of the other details is what we take from your brain waves. So it's deep neurometric data. So we put in sensors all over your head. Nothing goes inside your brain. We don't scratch the surface at all. There's no electric current, magnetic waves, nothing going in. We simply read your brain waves. In about half an hour, we take in maybe about 10 million data points. And we put that through our system to help understand how the different patterns in your brain, the different neural networks are functioning. So there are patterns or networks for anxiety, which means how does your brain process external or internal triggers which would make you anxious? How is it processing them? Networks for mood, so depression in a way. The network for addiction, obsession, compulsiveness. How are you responding to stress, anxiety, attention, chronic pain in the body? Understanding autonomous nervous system issues, understanding social anxiety, learning ability, learning disabilities, understanding how your executive functions are, your ability to execute tasks, critical reasoning, logical thinking, planning. Are you into over self-reflection? Things like that. All of these we get just directly from your subconscious brain patterns. I must clarify that what we are not trying to assess is how you are doing in that moment when you come for the assessment.
Okay.
What we are trying to find out is what is your innate response? How
Correct.
has your brain networks been programmed over the years? And programming could be just because of environment, upbringing, life's experiences, or it could also be the impact of certain incidents. So we are able to understand post-traumatic stress disorder. Interestingly, COVID has had a very, very negative response. The COVID vaccine also in certain cases. So we are able to see a lot of those things just with this half an hour reading of your brainwave patterns. So that's to answer your question.
Yes, and this is so
what do we
very
get to know?
interesting. It's a consolation because sometimes when one needs help, it's very difficult to relive the tough times and the moments. So just getting help to heal without having to relive those moments is actually quite precious.
The other part is that we focus as far as possible on getting objectivity into the relationship.
Correct, correct.
Rather than relying only on what you feel and then really paining you to go back into those memories, we are not really concerned about why you're anxious. What we are concerned about is the network and why it's not allowing you to deal with that anxiety, to deal with that stress, to deal with that trigger, right? So irrespective of what is the cause of anxiety, we are able to treat it. Irrespective of the cause of, obsessiveness, compulsiveness, or addiction, we're able to deal with it. Irrespective of why you're feeling sad, low, or in your own words, or somebody else is labeling depressed, we are able to help your brain deal with whatever's going around, right? And then alongside that, when we do our technology-based brain enhancement sessions, we are trying to be as objective and really helping your brain understand its own data and its own responses, and rewarding the right responses and not rewarding the responses which are not good for it. I know it's a little difficult to explain, but think about how you would train a child. Let's say you have a 10-month-old toddler who's moving around the house and he sees an electric plug point. What does the child want to do? Put their finger in?
Absolutely.
Can you call the biggest, teacher or psychologist or psychiatrist or trainer to say, please train my child, by telling them that if you put your finger into the plug point, you'll get electrocuted and it's not going to be good for you? No, you can't. Because all of those things require language. At 10 months, he doesn't have access to the language that you and I are used to, but he has all his 5 senses which are intact. And all learning, all habit change, all behavior pattern, the input is just these 5 senses. So as a mother, what do? As soon as his finger is going towards the plug point, you give a whack, right? And with some sort of an expression or some words which are expressing danger or displeasure. Each time my finger goes towards this funny looking hole in the wall, I get a little bit of pain, a little bit of discomfort, and my mom or my caregiver is very angry. It's done 3, 4, 5 times, and that network in the brain is set. That learning is set pretty much for life. It's not like 25 years later, the person says, okay, my mom's not looking around, there's nobody there, let me put my finger in, right?
Correct.
When does that happen? When you start doing stupid things, when you are not in control, when you're under the influence of alcohol or drugs or something, where you just don't know what you're doing. But otherwise, that's a network it's learning which has been set. So similarly, we are helping people throughout our series of neurotech-enabled enhancement sessions, where we keep mapping your brain in real time and showing you a reward on the screen on the basis of whether your brain is functioning well or not, moving in a direction which is good for you or not, where that specific neural pathway, let's say for ADHD or attention or depression, whatever pathways we have decided upon between the client and us, that, okay, these are the pathways which are dysregulated, which are not behaving well. When we did your assessment, we told you that you seem to have these issues and you agreed. So now we know that if the data is behaving in a certain manner, you will face issues. We want the data to behave better. So all the brainwave patterns to behave better. How do I get them to behave better? Since all our clients are paying clients, we can't be punishing them for bad behavior or bad behavior, in the brainwave patterns alone. We have to reward when they are good and not reward when it's not conducive. So each time this is happening at a fraction of a second, without you consciously knowing what you've done or not done, the brain is learning, the brain is unlearning, the brain is relearning. Its own behavior pattern, its own neural pathways are being corrected and enhanced without any impetus, without any hard impetus from us.
Correct.
So we are not forcing the brain to change. We are only giving it feedback about its instantaneous activity in the fastest possible manner. We're giving feedback at the speed of your subconscious thought, really. And that is allowing your subconscious brain to slowly but steadily change. So as it said, that change must come from within.
Correct.
That's what we are enabling, rather than an external sort of, compulsion to change.
Correct. My question then is, and it might sound comic, but I'm asking you this in seriousness. You said that people tend to over self-reflect. Do you also come across people that have no self-reflection? Is that something that you can tell from your mapping?
Of course.
And can you induce or enable compassion and empathy in the human brain with your work?
Great question. So we've mapped thousands and thousands of people's brains and done thousands of sessions on enhancement. There are networks in the brain which are responsible for empathy, networks which are responsible for your ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Yes, yes.
And we often see that these networks are dysregulated, making the person very, very consumed with themselves, with their comfort, with only their point of view, with only their needs. And once you allow those networks to regulate better and self-regulate, then some of these traits change by themselves. So yes, in a nutshell, it is possible to do that. And we do that a lot.
And that is so heartening to know, especially in this day and age. My other question is on the same lines, that there are empaths who are over empaths. And there was something I was reading about the brain that said that if people have smaller amygdalas, they can't empathize. So how do you deal with that, and how do you treat that? Is that something that you can diagnose and see with your scans and treat?
See, none of our scans can look at the physiology or the anatomy.
Okay. Yes.
Because it's not an MRI or a CT. We're only taking in, bioelectrical energy and converting it into a brainwave form, right? Just as you take electrical energy from the heart and convert it into an ECG to understand the function.
Correct.
Having said that, the brain is a marvelous, marvelous machine. Even when certain physical parts of the brain are either malfunctioning or, like you said, smaller in size or larger, the rest of the brain can be trained to perform those functions, maybe not to the 100% extent, but definitely to a larger extent, make it sufficient for the person to go about day-to-day lives. So when it comes to empathy or self-reflection, like you said, there are people who will go to either of the two extremes, where they are either all the times reflecting on their own actions, whether they are correct, whether they are wrong, how can they improve all of the time. And it can be pretty debilitating.
Yes.
And at the same time, thinking about oneself all the time can also lead to hubris, right? And we can see some of those patterns when we do our assessment. It is fairly easy to correct those with our brain enhancement sessions, but also then we offer some guidance in terms of what they should do in terms of their lifestyle change, certain do's and don'ts, and how they should involve their environment so that the environment does not propagate that same behavior again and again.
Correct. So you do guide with a lifestyle change, which I think is wonderful, sustainable, and practical. So I will now ask you about your 3 initiatives. One is, of course, NeuroLeap, that you've spoken about already, but just a 2-line brief so that we understand the difference between Arkni, PhotoBioLife, and Hail. Tell us about those.
Sure. NeuroLeap is a neurotechnology-based service. We have centers in Mumbai and Delhi where, 2 broad services. One is the neuro assessment, which is the brain function assessment using technology. Most of our clients would fall into 2 buckets. Either these are people who have no issues in terms of mental health disorders. They tend to be achievers from all walks of life, or students, anyone who wants to perform better in life. And they understand that the way to perform better is to first judge where you are, first measure where your brain is at. So it's a sort of a no regret decision where you come in and we tell you, what's your state, what's your pattern. For a lot of the people I have noticed, knowing the pattern is victorious enough. So it's not enough to know or be self-aware about your own personality, your own traits and behaviors. What if you could know why you are like that? What is driving that behavior, or what is driving lack of action, or what is driving that attitude? And what can you do to change it? And that's the assessment result. The second part, like I said, is the enhancement sessions. So we've been able to help people quit medication. They've been on psychiatric meds, anti-anxiety pills, antidepressants, ADHD. We've been able to help them get off all of those meds after several years of usage. It takes about a few months from our side. Help people quit smoking, alcohol abuse, marijuana, hard drugs, help with sleep disorders, autonomous nervous system issues, chronic pain, migraine, tinnitus, etc. all of this is done without medication, without you having to talk to a counselor, right? And that's NeuroLeap. It's a service. Our second offering, which you alluded to, is Arkni PhotoBioLife. These are devices which you can buy for home use. They are made with specifications which make it absolutely safe. So from children up to senior citizens, anyone can use them. They are made with parameters where you will not be able to harm yourself unless you actually start doing something stupid, right? Overusing them beyond a certain range. But otherwise, they are absolutely safe for home use. So those are red and near-infrared light therapy devices. To compare both of these offerings, NeuroLeap focuses on brainwave patterns. Arkni PhotoBioLife, the nasal device, the cap, both are red and near-infrared devices, they focus on energy. So both need to go hand in hand when we are talking about the brain. Your patterns need to be corrected and you need to be able to generate the right kind of energy, the right kind of power. So this is what we offer at home, like I said, for self-use. And the third initiative, HAIL, which is an acronym for Healthy Aging and Longevity Enhancement. It really is looking at both of these offerings and more in a holistic sort of umbrella, is how can we marry modern science that NeuroLeap and Arkni offer and a lot of the amazing tech-based diagnostics which are available worldwide and which are now coming to India, on how you can actually measure as much of your body and its aging as far as possible so that you can track and keep measuring it and using not just modern interventions, but also ancient Vedic wisdom, Ayurveda, herbs, supplements, naturopathy, everything that we have taken from our forefathers, which has actually proven to be good, but it's not always available in a format where the impact of it can be directly measured on your body and on your well-being. So HAIL is an effort to bring all of this together. And more importantly, there's something unique about HAIL, that we are leveraging the humongous amounts of neurometric data we have from NeuroLeap. So data not just about the brain, but the brain-gut connection, your whole nervous system, how it responds to stress, anxiety, how is lack of sleep impacting it, how is addiction impacting it, how have we been able to use our neuroenhancement sessions for helping people lose weight, for managing chronic pain. That is a treasure trove of data and experience over the last many years, which will now get integrated into the HAIL program so that people can get access to evidence-based therapies, evidence-based insights, evidence-based supplements, herbs on what can really work for you.
I truly appreciate the use of the word evidence-based. Kumar is somebody that also believes in the power of modern science as well as ancient wisdom. I appreciate your use of the phrase evidence-based work, where you are fortifying it with modern science and research. I want to age gracefully, but with joy, and that's what longevity is to me. So what is your take and a succinct message to our audience today on brain health and longevity?
In a certain way, looking after your brain, overall wellness and longevity can be very simple. Following the basic tenets of sleep, diet, lifestyle, exercise, connections. But in a certain way, it is also very difficult because we are hindered in our day-to-day pursuit of these activities with a lot of pressures, whether it is work, whether it is digital pressures, social media, pollution, and a lot of information and misinformation on a daily basis on what you should eat, when you should eat, how much you should eat, what is good for you, what is enough for you, what's not enough. HAIL hopes to be able to give you a lot of this knowledge, evidence-based, and also on some of the time-tested principles that your own family would have used. We hope to be able to bring it to you in a manner which is easy to apply in your day-to-day life, and most importantly, measure the impact of each one of these. So as long as you can measure your health on a regular basis and do the interventions which can help you change those measurements for the better, I'm sure you'll realize you're on the right path.
Kumar, one message for the millennials, Gen Alpha, and Gen Beta is too young, but the millennials and Gen Alpha, a lot of whom are suffering from severe anxiety due to pressures from overexposure to social media.
I could go on and on what you can or cannot do. And I completely recognize and empathize with the pressures that you go through. Start with the basics in terms of your sleep, in terms of diet, nutrition, and most importantly, exercise and micro challenges in your life. If you don't take the hard road at various junctures in your life, your brain will lose its ability to manage the stress, whether negative, in terms of your friends or, family or work or school or college, or even the general pressures of life. If you're not able to go through them and try and only look inwards and say, how can I change the environment? How can I just take some medication or coping mechanisms? Those are fine. Those are short-term measures. For the longer term, invest in a resilient you, invest in a hardworking you, invest in a self-disciplined you. Those are the only things which will hold you in good stead for the longer term.
Thank you so much, Kumar. Such a valuable message of hope to all the millennials out there and Gen Alpha. Pay heed.
Thank you. Thank you so much.